Hello and good evening, everyone. Hope you are doing great. So, I welcome you all on behalf of Brad's team. Before starting with this session, I would request you all to keep your mic on mute and turn on your camera, as this is an interactive session. Please feel free to ask the questions in chat box or raise your hands. I am Shabranshi Jain and I am pursuing BE in Computer Science branch from SIRTS College, Bhopal. So let's take a quick glimpse of what BRATS exactly is. BRATS is an independent organization which is helping in bringing campus to corporates. BRATS aim to help these students to bridge the gap between theoretical knowledge and provides real-time experience in the fields of management and engineering. Let's have a look at the message given by our captain, BRATS. Can we have the video, please?
India is the largest demographic education hub. Still, there are about 4 lakhs of students going abroad for higher education year on year. But one side, if I'm seeing, a lot of Indians are actually leading global corporates. That's the beauty of Indian talent, which needs to be pulled out. BRATS. Now, BRATS, what is BRATS? Everybody's hearing, you need to know what is BRATS. BRATS is Brands, Research, Advertising, Technology, and Strategies. What we are actually trying to do out here. So our last 3 years research developed this platform to connect industry and institutions. What are platforms we actually need to connect? We want you to get ready for the industry while you're in the institute itself. You are thoroughly going through your curriculums, but there are a lot of real-time experiences, case studies, live projects, courses maybe, and that has to be enrolled into your internships, otherwise recruitments. That's what we are here to bring out through your BRATS. My name is Suresh Kumar Kurapati and I'm the captain for BRATS. We already have about 1,000 plus students associated with us and a lot of students actually helping us to grow within the campuses, being our campus ambassadors. That's what we look forward to, and I welcome you all, and let's grow together. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
I feel so honored to be given a chance to introduce our guest speaker at BRATS, Mr. Maru, Senior Vice President, Merchant Services, Digital Payments and Loyalty, Worldline South Asia and Middle East. Mr. Maru heads the Merchant Services Business Division of Worldline South Asia and Middle East. He comes with over 20 years of experience across the domain of payments and merchant business. In Worldline, he is responsible for merchant acquisition, cards issuance processing, and CUG and loyalty services. Prior to joining Worldline in 2009, Mr. Maru was responsible for the merchant acquiring business at Global Payments APAC. Mr. Maru is known best for his adroit capabilities of converting raw prospects into long-term partnerships. Apart from a keen focus on profitability and enhanced top line, he has held strategic and key positions in sales, client services, and customer retention for vertical spanning merchant acquiring, issuance, and financial inclusion. His work has taken him across different regions of India and South Asia. I welcome you, sir. Now I would like to introduce our moderator for the evening, Urvi ma'am. Urvi ma'am is an MBA in marketing with nearly 14 years of rich experience in retail management, marketing, data analysis, web-based advertising, brand strategy, and communication. Urvi ma'am is a very competent and versatile marketing professional with proven abilities in devising marketing strategies to augment business and promoting products for business excellence. A versatile thinker, also great in developing strategic brands, brand effectiveness, and monitoring brand health. She has a demonstrated success in developing and implementing strategic marketing and communications, plan to improve product positioning, brand management, advertising, and gaining competitive marketing share. Her expertise is in analyzing, interpreting, and simplifying the information to the target audience. She is also an effective communicator with excellent relationship building and interpersonal skills. I welcome you, ma'am. Now over to you.
Thank you, Shubhranshi, for such a great introduction of mine and sir. We welcome you on behalf of Brat's team. It's our pleasure to host you today evening. So, sir, before we begin, I would like you to share a few words with our audience, and then we can get into the session.
Yes, sure. Thank you very much, and thank you, Shubhranshi, for such an elaborate introduction. It's always good to hear good things about ourselves. I actually was part of the launch which Suresh did almost, I think, about 1.5 years back for Bratz. And I'm very happy, very, very happy to see such a good progress in terms of what has been done. And as Suresh rightly mentioned, the youth is the future generation. Next is something which we have to bang on, whether it is about consumerism, whether it is about our political system, or whether it is about building nation. So I'm very happy that Suresh is working on that, and very, very, very hopeful that I would see Suresh and his Brat as a new education fintech and unicorn in coming days.
Wow. Thank you so much, sir. So before we, actually get into the session, I would just like to, ask you one thing which I'm very, curious to understand. Since we are all in this lockdown scenario, and you are part of the senior management in your team within Worldline, so, how do you see your company reacting with the challenges in terms of, how your team is coping up with the whole scenario?
If I have to be very frank, I think management was not really very ready about the situation. So while in February, we realized that there would be some issues, but and we started working and we started managing some bit of people from home, and some of them are working from office. But we never realized that there would be a lockdown in such a situation. For us, it was very important to look at 3 things. One was the data integrity, second was business continuity plan, and third was the well-being of our people. And I think immediately when the lockdown was announced, in my own belief, I think that the team has done a wonderful job, because in next 48 hours after the lockdown was announced, we were able to manage and get the systems back on track. People were working from home. We bought almost about 400, 500 laptops, dongles, network connections. And in just two days, I think we were back in form. And I think that's something which I'm pretty proud about. While it's been 4 months now, and we have done a survey with our customers, and I'm also happy that our customers are very happy and satisfied with the fact that our people have been dedicatedly working from home, and there have been no lapse at all. So in that way, I think it was difficult, but things are streamlined now. So that's about it.
So wow, I mean, that's like superb. I mean, organizing all this thing in the span of 2 days, super. So also one more thing, since now me and Suresh know you from for almost about a year plus now. Just wanted to understand, since you are a very avid equitarian, so how are you personally, getting along with this situation, like being away from the horses and all this in the house and all?
So one is that, I'm a man of data, because we manage and process data. So just to correct the data, I know Suresh from almost about 7 years now. So yes, if you talk about horses, there are only 2 things which I have been doing when I don't work. I either read or I write. So these are the 2 things which I used to do. But now riding is not possible. But just being a part of a technology company, I understand BCP. So I've got my people managing my horses, and there is a complete continuity there in place. And as far as reading goes, finished a couple of good books, and right now I'm reading a book on negotiation by Chris Woos, which is Do Not Split the Difference. And I think a very fantastic book which tells you that negotiate as if your life depends on negotiation. And I would actually recommend you should read the book. It's a fantastic book.
Wow. So, I mean, that's like, a great liner for every one of us to even go back to read some nice books. So, I'm just going to our actual session now. So since you have been working, in the banks and fintechs and all those things, so you would really want to understand, what are fintechs or tech fin startups and all, since all these terms have become very, very common. Nowadays everybody have started using them, but if you can just put some light for our students who can really understand the meaning of it.
So I used to work with ICICI Bank in my early days, and after ICICI Bank I joined the technology company. So we always used to call at that point of time the companies as technology companies, payment technology companies. And I joined Global Payments in 2006. Now, after downturn, I think this term of fintech and tech fins are started coming up. And there can be various names. And I believe it might be a little confusing for a lot of people, whether you call it fintech, you call them tech fins, you call them e-commerce companies, you call them startups, you call them telecom companies, you call them, the payment companies. So all those are little confusing, but just to put the perspective in the right perspective, I would say fintech is a financial technology company. Any company which supports the financial services with the technology. Any company which uses technology to distribute financial services products to the consumer. Any company which uses technology for making sure that they are able to solve the consumer problem with respect to all the financial services product. I think that's in a very simple way as a fintech company. If you go back, some years back, just before 2000, that was an era where technology was still there, and bank used to use technology, but not to the extent of which we use it today. So we had cards, we had ATMs, and I think they were still okay to be there, but they did not really solve the problem of the customer. So even at that point of time, if you have to pay your bills, you would have to go to the branch and pay by check or cash. If you have to do some remittance, you will have to stay in long queues. So that was a time when ATM was available, card was available, but in real sense, the technology was not there. As I normally say that it was an IT setup, not really a product and a technology setup. And then after 2000, if you look at it, how it evolved was that the internet started picking up. And there were a lot of companies who started using internet. And you look at the companies like Oxygen, you look at the companies like MobiKwik. So most of these companies, they actually came up and they started looking at the area where banks were not able to reach. They started looking at the so-called, as today we call them, as a financial inclusion as a definition. So they started working on those technologies and reaching out to the places in the tier 3, tier 4 cities. And then if you look at this era was for, I think, about 6-7 years, from 2000 to 2008. In 2008, after the downturn, that was a time when a lot of these companies started picking up. So when there was this bill payment being taken care by companies like Oxygen, BillDesk, TechProcess, MobiKwik, and in 2008, when the downturn happened, that was a time when the fintech actually got birth. And there were companies like Paytm, there were companies like PhonePe. They started using mobile as a technology. And all this combining together, internet, data, and mobile, I think that's where the fintech was being born. And now if you see in this era, which is from 2000 to 2008 to 2016, was this time when the mobile was really picking up, and there were a lot of applications which was coming up. Even to that extent, the large banks like HDFC came up with PayZapp. So those were the time when people were looking at, the banks were looking at, fintechs were looking at mobile. And then what happened? This is an era which is after 2015, which I really call it an era which is a short-lived era, because 2015 to 2020. And after 2020, I'm sure the life is going to be very different. But between this 2015 and 20 was the era where you see a lot of these companies, a lot of these fintech startups in various segments. So you look at education, you look at insurance, you look at wealth, you look at P2P lending. All these people started mushrooming, and this is the time where companies like a lot of payment companies started coming up, and with the support by the government because of demonetization, because of a couple of other initiatives, this era actually has got a lot of growth into the fintech segment. And then now we are talking about 2020, and this is going to be a very different era in which we will enter. And this is going to be an era of, now we call it TechFin era. TechFin are the people like Google Pays, Amazon Pays. They are the ones who have got the consumers in place. They were not primarily the financial services companies, but they had technology in place. And now from the technology, they are evolving into a TechFin and evolving into a company which will sell financial services products. You look at Amazon, they have started selling mutual funds. You look at Flipkart, they have started selling mutual funds. So I think this is the beginning of a new era. That's what is fintech and TechFin all about.
Wow. So since you already spoke about, the evaluation about the TechFin versus what is happening currently. So, and you were in the past, you were part of the acquisition positions also, like in terms of acquisition, other roles and everything. So I would want to understand, how do you see the change in the last 5 years, for India to become the country currently what we are, with the highest number of fintech adaptation rates?
So as I said, 2015 to 20 has been a very different phase. And I think fintech in India were thriving on the massive untapped markets. They were thriving on the rising customer expectations, and also in terms of the quick adoption of technology, which all the new next generation is able to adopt. So I think these were the three key factors on which the fintechs were thriving in the last 5 years. And then also it is very important to mention the initiatives by the government. Now, if you look at various initiatives, I can list down at least about 20 initiatives right now, where government has actually taken initiative in all the respect to create an ecosystem which is very conducive to all the economy, social and demographic attributes. So if you look at those initiatives, the first is the startup initiative. The startup initiative which allows there is I think a budget of almost about $1.5 billion which is available for startup. Then there are initiatives which have to do with the innovations. There are separate budgets of I think about 200,000 rupees for the innovation for the young MSMEs. Then the definition of MSME recently has been changed. There are the startups which are now part of the micro segments. So if you look at those initiatives which were taken by government on the startup side, those are very encouraging. Then you look at the steps which were taken to introduce the instruments like Aadhaar, eKYC, UPI. All this has actually enabled fintechs to propel the growth. Now, if you look at the initiative by RBI, which is the India Stack. Now, India Stack is something where somebody can just simply connect and start the connection and start integrating with the data available, at the UIDA level. So those APIs which are available. So on the technology end, government has done good work. Then you look at in terms of the policy change, the MDR has gone away. The merchant discount rate which was there has gone away for UPI as well as the RuPay cards. So there are a host of issues. A host of initiatives which has also helped this ecosystem to grow in the last 5 years.
Wow. So since you spoke about investments and everything, so I would want to just add or rather ask one thing is like, how do you see investments or for that matter, funding changing the future trends for us?
So last 4-5 years have been pretty exciting for India. In my knowledge, I think it's been about $10 billion dollars of investment which has happened in fintech in last 5 years. If you look at 2014-15, I think the number of fintechs in India were almost about 700. And in the last 5 years, we have grown by we have added almost about 1,500 fintechs in the segments like wealth, education, the account management, distribution, insurance. So I think this 1,500 fintechs now makes us, in sub data says we are number 3 country in the world, or number 4 country in the world after China, US and UK in terms of the highest number of fintechs in India. Then again, if you look at the recent data, recent survey which came in, which says that the adoption rate of fintechs in India is almost now reached to 87%. So I think all this, if you look at it, these investments have been really very promising, has been put to the right use, and this should continue even going forward. The last 6 months data, which I read somewhere, was there was 86 deals which happened, and to the extent of almost about $800 million, even during the COVID time. So I think those fundings are happening, the investments are happening. The only thing is that the fintechs have to realize as to where do they need to invest. Most of the investment, I believe, are happening now in the neo-banking and also in terms of the lending, P2P lending, the segments. And also the fintechs are looking at the new trends. Now, what are the changing trends? The changing trends are machine learning, artificial intelligence, blockchain. So those are the changing trends where fintechs are investing their funds. In my opinion, I think we are still far away from really getting into the right use of artificial intelligence or machine learning, because at the end of the day, to get the right output, you require substantial data with a lot of dimensions in that data. I think which we are really very far away from there. In my view, it is still about 2 to 3 years time where we will really see the benefit of these investments in AI and machine learning and blockchain. But yes, I am pretty happy that investments are still coming to India. And in the last 1 year, we have been beating China in terms of the investments in fintech. So I think that's something which is very promising.
Yeah, so even we have read that in the news that since a lot of companies are now, looking India as a booming market in terms of investments and all. So hopefully we will take over China soon.
Yeah, we should.
And we will be there in the global map for the next investment thing. So my last and concluding question, I wanted to keep it short so that, we can open the session to the students and the other people so that they can clear their doubts. So what are your views in terms of, overcoming the challenges, what we see in terms of the fintechs are? What do you think, how we can overcome all these things?
So I think there are very clearly 3 challenges. One is in terms of the changing regulatory environment. What has happened in the last 3-4 years, the regulations have been changing, and it has been changing for better. But what really happens with the fintech is that they find it difficult to adopt to the changing environment. Obviously, it requires investment, it requires time, it requires a good amount of gestation period. So I think that's where somewhere we need some stability in terms of sustaining with a regulation for some time. Second, I see is still a concern, which is the infrastructure concern. While I believe that India is becoming a poor data country to a rich data country. If you guys have heard about the account aggregators, so that's a big move which is going to change the market. Now, so data will become key. And anyways, when we talk about fintech, data is important, distribution is important, consumerism important. But I think the infrastructure concerns remain. Whether it is in terms of the telecom infrastructure, whether it is in terms of the customer data, I think those things needs to be addressed. And the last, I would say, the lack of capital availability to fintechs. Now, when I spoke about these investments and very promising investments which are happening, and investments, if you actually look at the data of investment, the 10% of the investment has happened into the seed funding or the early stage funding. Just 90% of the investments are into the major series B, C, D, EFG series of funding. So which means that the new startup will always have a lack of capital. While government is trying to bring all those startup capitals, startup kitties, funds, even government has announced the payment infrastructure fund. You have people like MasterCard, you have got people like Visa who have invested, MasterCard invested into Pine Labs. But then again, those investments have been in a matured company, in a company who has seen the life cycle, the company was successful. Look at Visa, they invested in BuildDesk recently. Again, BuildDesk is a matured company, a very reputed company. So I think that's where the challenge is, that the lack of capital availability for the startups and the early stage fintechs. So these are three challenges very clearly. And the way I see these challenges needs to be addressed is very clearly fintech has to be clear in terms of three things, as I mentioned. One is that fintech needs to be the product and the consumer company. You have to, so look at the fintechs. Whom are they competing with? They are competing with banks. And if you look at the entire ecosystem of the bank in India, there are 3 or 4 banks who have got investment, who have got appetite to invest into technology. Just, in my opinion, are they do have IT. They do have I would say the IT department. It is not a technology department, or it is not a product department. It's an IT department. It's an IT operation department. So fintechs very clearly need to be product focused, and they need to find out products where they can address the problems of the consumers. So the investment in technology needs to be around developing a product. Second is that the consumers are king. And when I say consumer, which also means that the data is king. So any investment which is to do with data analytics, any investment which is to make sure that you understand your consumer better. There are many times there is this question which comes to me as to the bank. They have got a big legacy system. They are far big in terms of their investment appetite. But why is that banks have not been able to reach the scale which the fintechs have reached? And I think this is key, that the banks have data, but they rarely understand their customer. They rarely understand their data. But if you look at these fintechs, they understand everything. You just log on to Google and you start getting all those the pop-ups about your liking. So this fintechs really understand the data. So I think the second important point and the way forward is that fintech should work on data. And third is there are examples, and there are proven examples where the collaboration has really worked well. And you need to work very closely to find if there are collaborations with the legacy banks. You see a lot of this collaborations, like Oriental Bank has done a collaboration with Fiscom. There are many such examples where the banks have tied up with fintechs. They have done collaboration with companies like Worldline, which is a fintech. They have done collaborations. Banks have done collaboration with companies like Pine Lab. So there are examples where banks are collaborating. I think fintech really needs to keep their eyes open. The last advice, which I believe, is that we are still far away. While all the numbers in the last 4 or 5 years are very promising, they look very astounding, but we are still far away from really being there in terms of, if you look at a market like Africa, where the M-Pesa has reached to 96-97% of the households. So the connectivity of this fintechs has reached to the level at the last mile. But in India, we are still at tier 1 and tier 2. Tier 3 is something where we still have not addressed the concerns. The advantage of technology has still not been implemented in the tier 3 and tier 4 areas. So I think we're still far from our goal. And if we are far from our goal, my one advice, and which I always keep talking to the young startup, which keeps coming to me, that they should work more harder. Now today, if you look at a very simple example, today we have 5 days a week. And I think India is not ready for 5 days a week. India should have 6 days a week and maybe at least about 12 hours of working. That's where we can beat, and we can actually reduce the gestation period and compete with the markets outside India.
Wow. So as you said, so I would like to conclude this in a way, yes, we are very far, but I think thanks to this pandemic, wherein the movement which our PM started, in the sense, digitizations and all those things reaching every household, somewhere we are, reaching there. And I think sooner we'll reach the goal what we just mentioned. So let's be hopeful. I mean, we are penetrating that way. we are penetrating in tier 2 cities also. Now in the last 4 months, we are seeing a lot of, tier 2 city people are also not going to the bank, and everything is happening digitally for them also. So people are, moving towards digitization, but yeah, it will take time. So thank you, sir, for making all the thoughts clear in our mind. And now it is open for all our audience. Yes, oh, we already have someone raising their hand. Indrajit, go on.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah, very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for the session. It was really enlightening. I have actually two questions, sir. To start with, with fintech, basically the question arises the data safety. That is a very big question. It's always been there. How about the data safety? Because the middle person comes around, like I'll be going to the app, and then the app will be paying to the bank to do this. There is a second person part of the system. So how much we can trust that second person into the system, because there is always a problem when the second person, when you know between the connection, the transparency, that has always been a problem in the villages also. So how about that? And with blockchain technologies coming, which is speaking about peer-to-peer movement and cryptocurrency, which also giving that amount of transparency in terms. So how fintech is going to play around in this situation?
So you actually have answered your question itself. So blockchain is the answer to the data secrecy. So I feel that way, because blockchain by itself is a very soundproof and safe and secure way of registering the data. So very clearly, blockchain, a lot of things are happening. In fact, India is the only country where government, unlike the other countries, India is the only country where government is far more proactive on the blockchain than the fintechs. So blockchain definitely is the answer to the data privacy and data security. But apart from that, if you look at what has happened in the last 1 year, one very strong move which government has done is the data localization. So now with all these companies, now WhatsApp is starting again with their payments, and all these companies took some time, but they have actually got their servers, their data localization system is in place. Now for any data which belongs to an Indian citizen has to reside in India. So that's a very strong move, and that's a very bold move, I believe. And I think that should give a lot of confidence. Second is the account aggregator, which I spoke about. The account aggregator is a move where there are about 7 account aggregators which have been empaneled. And this account aggregators will take data from banks, from the fintechs, from the large financial services companies, and this data will be available for the individuals. And these individuals, I believe they would be called financial information users, and the data which will be given by the banks are called financial information providers, FIPs. So that's a second move which is very important, and I think in a 1 month time we will have a pilot being rolled out, which will also mean that there will be a complete secrecy of data. Government will monitor the data. Government will have complete control over who will use the data. There will be a complete track and record. And third, as you rightly said, blockchain. I have a very strong belief in blockchain, and I personally feel that's going to be future over a period of some years. So I think these 3 moves gives a lot of confidence, should give a lot of confidence to our consumers. And apart from that, if you look at the fintech companies like Worldline and the other companies, the companies like MasterCard, Visa, there are these large companies who have invested a lot of resources into the data management. So as I said in the beginning, when this situation happened of lockdown, the first thing which came to our mind was data integrity. So there is a lot of focus on data integrity. So I think from that point of view, India is safe. And then the last thing which also supports and which should also encourage consumer in using mobile technology or using the fintech technology is the regulations which has been built around by the RBI, which has been built by government, or the schemes like Visa, MasterCard, Amex. And I think the operating guidelines are pretty much clear and safe. So consumers should have good confidence in terms of the data management in India.
Right, sir. That was very clear and transparent. Now I have a better idea, to be precise, because reading from different sources will.
Thank you.
But coming from you, sir, gives a lot of honor, because this is my data after all, and I don't want to be shared by anywhere. Like post this session, someone else is talking about it or something. But thank you, sir. Thank you so much. So second, I just want to know about, with this technology, as you mentioned in your talk, that probably connectivity is a problem in India. We have already reached to a tier 1 and tier 2. And there's a vast population of India which resides in the villages. So how we can, where even banks, cooperatives are not also available. So not only cooperative banks are available, and we have now got the Surface Act now where that can be also taken care of. But how fintech can actually, spread their wings and reach out to that connectivity level? So what they can be doing, what they should be doing to reach to that connectivity.
So very clearly, when you look at the evolution which I spoke about, people like Oxys and MobiKwik, they started going into tier 3 and tier 4 because that was the place where they could see the market. And even today, even after 20 years of that evolution I talk about, still tier 3, tier 4 are the cities which are completely untapped. And that is the reason why fintechs are more capable in terms of reaching out to these places. One, because they work on technology. And technology, I think, is a big enabler when you actually have to reach out to the tier 3 and tier 4s. There are various examples. Now, if you look at the technologies which are only related to the smartphone, but then you look at a lot of fintechs who still work on IMPS and they still work on the feature phone. And I think, so very clearly, this sort of a thinking still is not available with the all legacy large banks. They still operate, they still look at the payments, they still look at the banking solution. But if you look at fintech, what are fintechs? Fintechs are somebody who will look beyond payments. They will look beyond the banking solutions. And that's where fintechs will actually should go to the market, which is tier 3, tier 4, understand the customer, which is the key, I believe, and understand the need of the customer, which is just not about payments and which is just not about banking solution. You see a lot of these financial inclusion companies, and if you see financial inclusion companies and this partnership, which they have done with the banks, banks have not been really there. It's all the fintech companies which are there in the tier 3 and tier 4s. And they have solutions available which are to do with the online solutions. They have solutions available to manage the customer's expectation even through the offline channels. So I think that those investments which are happening with the fintechs reach out to the tier 3, tier 4 are in the right direction. They should continue to look at these options where the online, offline, both the things are available. They should continue to understand the customer data really well. Now, if you see the increase in the number of transactions after COVID, the growth has come from the tier 3 and tier 4 cities. So very clearly, fintechs have been able to reach there. Now, I'll just give you an example of the COVID situation. While the banks were still focusing on running their daily operations, there were these large fintech companies like PineLabs, Worldline, Innovity, BillDesk. These companies reached out to the tier 3, tier 4 cities, and their transactions volumes have grown up. They have not been stagnant about the transactions volume and growth. So I think very clearly fintechs have the way to reach out to them. Obviously, I do understand that there is a lot of investment which needs to go into the telecom and the infrastructure related to telecom. But I think fintechs have found their way in terms of understanding customers, in terms of creating solutions, which also works on the offline as well as the online protocols.
Right, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Yes, Ekta. Ekta, you there? Ekta, we can't see you. Can you be a bit louder?
Hello, is my voice audible right now?
Yes.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
No, actually, I have read like Worldline magazines, like I've just gone through, and I have few questions which I've collected. So, like my first question is, like how companies are building zero-based trust model in terms of consumer experience.
Sorry, I didn't get your question. You're talking about trust building with the consumers?
Yeah, because everyone, like every customer is basically, they have their own privacy and security. So how fintech is actually helping, you know, trust, zero-based trust model.
So if you talk about trust, if I understand your question right, you're talking about how fintechs would build trust with the consumers.
Yeah.
So one is that the answer which I gave some time back, I think with all that what we are doing on the data side, there should be trust available for the consumer. But more importantly, if you talk about a trust which with the consumer portfolio of each of the fintech, I think the trust comes from the delivering on their promises. So if you are a consumer, so let's say if you are a consumer for Paytm, and if Paytm is delivering on your promises, that's where you start building the trust. If you look at the kind of investments all these fintech companies have done, I'll give you an example of Ola, Uber, when all of us used to ride. If you have a problem, within a minute, you will get a resolution from Ola customer service, and that too on a chatbot. So these companies have invested a lot in terms of managing the after sales service. And I think that's where you build the trust. So one is the regulation, the India infrastructure, the whole ecosystem which India is as a government is pushing, and that's, I think, one should be very promising. Second is these companies, the investment is going into after sales service. They value customer. They understand the customer is upset. There are various algorithms being developed by these companies who understand customer behavior much in advance before a customer would want to react. And I think those investments are helping them to build the trust. Now, look at the growth of fintech. Why fintech growth is so phenomenal? Why the number of transactions have gone up? Why this 21 unicorn have been there in India in the last 4-5 years? That's only because they are able to build that trust with the consumers.
Sir, another question is there. Like how is Worldline is going to train local merchants so that they should understand the power of omni-channel strategy, like because there are a lot of local so there
are you talking about the local companies in the competition? I'm sorry, I didn't.
No, sir. Actually, I'm talking about how Worldline is basically focusing on giving trainings to merchants about the omni-channel strategy, about this trend.
Yeah. So we have been in business in India for almost about 20 years now. So again, going back on the cost of repetition, I would say that we focus too much on data. We understand our merchants really well. We understand as to when they would want to react. And even much before that, our people will reach out to them and solve their problems. So we have got a proactive grievance management system. So that's one. Second is that we have technology in place where we do everything through the remote terminal management or through the remote access. So whenever we have to train these people with the new applications, it's been done very remotely. Third is that we also have a lot of videos. We have got a team of about 1,600 feet on street. They regularly meet these merchants. They regularly keep interacting with them, and they keep training those merchants. And the last thing is that I think more to do with our product design, where I have more belief that the way we design our product are such that it is very easy for our customers or our merchants to use. So not really much of training are required when we launch a new product, but we do have a mechanism which is a regular training mechanism by the way of videos or by the way of bulletins, by the way of our people meeting and reaching out to these merchants.
Okay.
Yeah, did I answer your question?
And the last question I just would like to know, like as I'm like MBA student, so like what roles and responsibilities? Hello. Yeah. Like what kind of roles and responsibilities for students in terms of fintech it should be necessary so that like as today generation should look forward to it. Because as you talked about
Yeah.
the changing trends of AI, machine learning, so what, so that every student should need to reskill them in terms of technology.
I think very clearly I'll give 2 or 3 advice. I'm not really, uh, I'm not an authority in terms of giving advice to, young bright kids like you. But I'll still say there are 3 things. One is very clearly that you need to understand how these opportunities are coming up and unfolding. It is very important to read a lot of magazines, read a lot of books, and understand how these opportunities are unfolding in which segment. So as I was telling, and I hope the Mata Saraswati is sitting on my tongue, and I said that Suresh will create a education tech unicorn by the name of BRATS. So I think you have to understand that education is going to be a big thing. So these segments like health, they are going to be a big thing. Lending is going to be big. New banking. So I think understanding the opportunity is the first thing which you guys need to do. And if you understand the opportunity right, then obviously then you will make the first right move of being in the right industry. So that's part number one. That's one. Second is that while you prepare yourself for getting into fintech and so you at this point of time, it's difficult for anyone to assess whether which side of the business you would be. So I would suggest that you should do some projects with the fintechs, maybe a 1-month project, 2 months projects. We with Worldline, we actually encourage a lot of students to come to us, and we do a lot of projects. We give a lot of projects to students. So you should do those projects, which will actually give you a holistic view of what happens in a company which is a startup or in established fintech. So that will give you a lot of understanding. And a third is, I think, as I said earlier, that don't have a lot of expectation about how the world see this fintech. I've been to offices of Google, Amazon, in fact Zomato, a very swanky office, and you see a lot of those young kids sitting on the bean bags, working, and all those are good to get excited about it. But at the end of the day, you have to be focused and you need to keep working hard.
Thank you, sir. It's a nice having session with you.
Thanks. I'm glad to speak to you.
Moving on to Harsha.
Hello, sir. Good evening.
Can you spot on, Harsha?
Just a minute, sir. Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Hello, sir. Good evening. I'm in first year of MBA. My question to you is like, what are the scope and role of marketing operations in fintech, sir? If I want to have a career in fintech, but if I'm more interested in operations or marketing, what has to be done? What are the roles and scope? That's my question.
So either you can be a person who can do marketing, or either you can be a person who can manage operations.
Correct.
It's very difficult and very rare to find somebody who has got an operation mindset but is still willing to look at marketing. So, but having said that, I think there's a lot of scope. If you see, the fintechs are growing, and as I said, there are almost about 2,200 every year. There are almost about 1,500 fintechs which are coming up. And while everybody will use a lot of technology, but there is still, in India, you will still require a lot of human touch, and there is a lot of management, operation management, which still needs to be done. Also, secondly, you can't completely depend on technology. You still need to have check and balances, a maker and checker approach. So you need people on the back-end operations. Also, you need people who think about how this entire operation or the value chain will work. So you need people on the operation side. And this demand will never come down. It will keep on growing. Marketing is a very open field. Either you call it sales or you call it marketing. Those are two different things, or maybe a very thin line difference, but those are two different things. But if you're talking about sales, and if you're talking about the sales and the customer connect, and I think the opportunities are immense. And not only in fintech, but across any segment, the opportunities are immense. I have been a hardcore sales guy, and then over a period of time, I have started owning businesses within the company. And now I manage the operation, I manage product, I manage technology, and I also manage sales. So, but maybe, maybe we can connect sometime and I can actually talk about, what you need to do to become a better sales professional. But the only one advice which I can give, which I follow for myself is, as a good sales professional, you should never assume. You should never assume anything. If you follow that one principle, I think you will be wide open to look at many opportunities in your life.
Thank you, sir.
We moving on to Nitin. Is Nitin there?
Yes, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, Nitin.
Yeah, very much.
Good evening, sir. So my question to you is, as you said, the fintech revolution has started in the year 2015. So till the revolution is continuing. So talking about the data, as you said, the blockchain might come into existence in India. So as we can see that most of the transactions which take place now are too heavy, and blockchain couldn't handle that kind of so many transactions. So how can the technology play in a role so that blockchain can also handle so many transactions which are taking place right now?
So now if you look at the use cases, what are the use cases which we are talking about? We are talking about use cases in terms of reconciliation, use cases in terms of tax payments, use cases in terms of, so those are transactions which have got 3 or 4 hops. So as of now, the blockchain is starting with very minimal hops, but then eventually it has to go to a level, because as and when you start adding more data, as and when you invest more into technology and make it much more wider, I think that's where this entire the entire blockchain will actually evolve. As of now, it is just evolving. It is a pretty nascent stage. One of the very recent use case which I had seen was in terms of a car servicing. One OEM which actually wants to use blockchain for tracking the car servicing transactions. As to how many times your car has actually come to the service center. So today the focus is more in terms of looking at minimal hops, but in terms of complete data authenticity, complete data transparency, and the seamless execution of blockchain. But over a period of time, I'm sure that companies will invest into blockchain. They will invest into much wider, invest more into coding and developing a better blockchain technology. But right now, I think for the next 1 or 2 years, the use case is going to be with a very minimal transactions, and I think that will take some time.
Thank you, sir.
We have Simona next. Simona, are you there?
Yes, ma'am. Yes. Yeah. Good evening, sir. Thank you for the lovely session. We really enjoyed and got to know a lot of things which we weren't much aware of. So I have a question, sir. How companies are using and adapting hybrid cloud strategy in their organizations?
When you say hybrid cloud technology, are you talking about the cloud as well as the middlewares? What is that you're talking about?
Hello.
Hello. When
Oh,
you say
sorry,
hybrid
sir. I
cloud,
lost you for a minute. Can you please repeat?
when you say a hybrid cloud technology, what exactly you mean by hybrid cloud technology? What does that mean by that? Are you talking about the cloud as well as the middleware firmware being used, the data centers being used?
I think we lost her. Simona, are you there?
Maybe I can check. I can check with my CIO and respond back if you want. I'm not really too much expert on the cloud computing, but if she's talking about the usage of cloud, obviously it has gone up because most of these applications are now hosted on cloud. But then there is the whole middleware and firmware which is also being there in the data center. But I'm not very sure whether I can really respond to the cloud computing aspect of the technology, because that's not my domain.
Okay. Maybe she can connect with you off
Sure, sure.
then we can take that up. There is one question from Priyansh. Priyansh, you can put up your question.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Sir, I had a question. Does every student needs to reskill themselves with terms of technology to understand how businesses are adapting excellence and innovation?
Yeah, obviously, there is no doubt about it, and it has to be ongoing, because you see the change and you look at the change. And somebody asked about blockchain. Even on the blockchain itself, you will have to go through developing your skill set in the next several years. So obviously there is no question about it. Learning is a unending process, and the way things are changing, the time period of the transition of a technology has really come down. So I very clearly see there is a lot of efforts which bright young kids like you will have to put in the coming times.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. I had one more question. As every brand is focusing more on localized consumer seamless experience, so how UniTerminal, strong consumer authentication, etc., will bring together the future of tomorrow?
So that is important and very critical, because when you talk about the trusted authentication, that's where the whole discussion what we had in terms of data becomes very important. So trusted authentication will play a very critical role. And if you see in the last 2 or 3 years, a lot of things have changed in terms of the authentication levels. Even to that extent that now as we speak, there is version 3DS2, which is about to get launched. There is the whole revolution of PDS2, which is happening in Europe. So the data security and the authentication level has to improve, and they will keep improving. Even if you look at the eKYC, now eKYC has been approved very recently only for those consumers who give consent for using their Aadhaar as an identity. So all those authentication levels are pretty important. I believe when it comes to data, the end use of data is to make sure that you are able to use the data for the right authentications for your transactions. So those things are pretty important. Those things are happening at this point of time. But how you use that data and how you actually massage that data to actually get this entire trusted authentication frictionless is the challenge. Because even today, you see people like JustPay, when you actually do a transaction on the mobile, you immediately get a recognition of your OTP, and then OTP is being captured immediately. So those level of frictionless technologies are coming. But I am saying that still there needs to be a lot of investments which has to happen on the trusted authentication. 3DS2, I think, will actually help and solve a lot of problems, because then we are talking about various dimensions of data which will be used for trusted authentication.
Okay, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Guys, is there any more questions?
Yes, ma'am. Sir, my name is Anushri Sengupta, and I have one question. Why customers demand and organizations are actually adapting the role of agility and building resilience in the market?
Sorry, you'll have to repeat the question. Sorry.
Why customers demand and organizations are actually adapting the role of agility and building resilience in the market?
You will have to simplify this question for me. Just simplify this question for me.
Okay, so why customer demand and organization are actually adopting the role of agility?
Agility, you are talking about the agility of the organization. Yeah, okay, got it. Yeah, so all what we spoke about, when we talk about fintech, and as I said, the fintech is the whole fintech is thriving on the fact that the consumers are changing. They are thriving on the fact that the consumer is more adaptive to technology, and the whole focus of fintech is consumer centric. So if you don't change, if you only want your consumer to change, if you don't change by yourself, I think you are kissing to death. So very clearly, all the fintechs which are successful are the ones who have understood that they also need to change by the time. You look at this companies like Flipkart, how they started. Look at the companies like Amazon. They started selling books, and now what do they sell? They sell everything. They sell mutual funds now. So they have been changing, and they have been looking at the change. Look at Google Pay. Look at Google. Now Google, they realized that the payment is a very critical subset of this entire offering, and they started off with UPI, and they are one of the most prominent and dominant player when it comes to the UPI volumes. So I think you have to be very open when you have to look at the consumers and the feedbacks. Look at if you have to understand whether which is a promising company for future, just write a feedback on their social media platform, and you will realize by the way they react. So any company, if they react in a manner which is progressive, which is positive, which is assuring, you can be rest assured that this is a company which will progress in life. But if you look at the companies who will start fighting with you and start defending, then you know that this company is going for dogs in few years. So very clearly, companies have to adopt. They have to be agile. And in India specifically is a very different market, because here today we have got 35% of the millennials and they operate in our company. So even today our company, we have got a focus on, we call it juniorization, or we call it young people to be onboarded in our company. So the target is that at least about 40% of the population should be below 35 years. So below 30 years. 40% of the population should be below 30 years, and some percentage should be the female crowd. So our focus is more in terms of the juniorization and young people, and these are the people who will actually make the company more agile. Obviously, I'm not saying that people like me make it more rigid, but the young guys, when they come in on board, they are the one. Look at my daughter. She's about 14 years old. She's the one. She teaches me a lot. Even today for this webinar, she was the one to set up the entire system for me. So this generation will actually teach companies to be more agile, and I'm very sure that all the agility will actually bring a lot of fertility in the company.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
So can we take one more question? We have someone raising a hand already.
Yeah, just take the last one. And actually, it is very nice talking to the young crowd, and they are asking very interesting question. But I do have paucity of time, but let's take one more question.
Yeah, that's why I asked before, jumping to that question. So this is the last question. Abhignya, please go on.
Sir, good evening. Sir, in the viewpoint of finance, sir, where companies are using this 80 by principle in terms of innovation and technology, sir?
Which principle are you talking about? 80 by 20?
80 by 20 principle.
Yeah, so talking about, okay. So now it actually depends, 80-20 principle is a Pareto law, as we call it. It's a very generic principle, but it depends. It depends on the situation. It depends on the segments. I'm not very sure, because whether this is a principle which any company specifically uses, but yes, in terms of the data management, in terms of understanding data, the 80-20 principle is sometime being used. So theoretically, all these principles, I'm not really sure whether, if you ask me, I haven't used the 80-20 principle for so long now. But if the companies have to look at some segments and where their revenues has to come from the 20% of the customers, and the 80% of the revenue comes from the 20% of the customers, I think those areas they will have to find out. I'm not very sure. I'm not very happy giving you this response, but I'm not very sure about where 80-20 principle can be used by the company, because generally we do a lot of data analytics, and we use a lot of tools to understand the data, because as a company, as a Worldline, we are a company full of the big data. And there are several tools available. There are several strategic processes available to look at the data. But 80-20 is a very generic way of, it's a very superficial or a very high level way of looking at things. But if we are talking about fintechs and we are talking about data mining, I think we have to go to a very deeper level and we have to slice and dice to a much larger extent. Just by saying that my 20% of the customer are giving me 80% of the revenues, I think those days have gone. I'm really sorry, but I haven't used this for many years now.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Sir, one thing.
Is it that Suresh? Is it that I'm outdated because a couple of those questions were like I need to go back to the the university. I believe.
Yeah. So, sir, the one input I wanted to ask, like, as humans, are we really going towards robotic life? Or we will be going to be some kind of a life because fintech and all technology, AI. So what do you see coming future? Of course, industries are moving a lot of tech side, but what about life?
Are you asking this question just because the last 4 months you haven't seen a lot of people? And have you bought a couple of robots for cleaning your home, cleaning utensils? Is that the reason? So robotics, we are using robotics in a big way, and robotic process automation is something which we are using it really well to streamline a lot of our operational processes. So I think in India, at least in fintech, we are one of the first companies which are using the RPAs very efficiently. So yes, there are important of having the robots in the operational process, in streamlining operational process. But the way we are, the way the whole world is, we need human touch. We need the brains behind. We need the emotion behind whatever we do. So robots will not really take over everything. But yes, there are certain areas where robots can function far better than humans. And the RPA is one of the areas where I strongly believe we should use this application.
So as the RPA systems are coming, will that really hit any kind of employment too?
Any infusion of any technology will only expand the market. I am a very optimistic guy, and I always believe that if there is a RPA which comes in, it will expand the market, it will expand the horizon for certain new things. And as somebody rightly questioned, I think Anushri or Priyanshi questioned about it, that do we need to continuously upgrade our skills? And that is where, the most important aspect would be that, the people will have to upgrade their skills and they will have to use their skill set in a new dimension. But will it take away employment? I don't believe so. It will create new horizons. It will open up the new horizons. Just look at this. If RPA is coming in picture, what do you think would happen to the data analytics and the data mining field? It's going to grow up. So the field would actually open up. There are people who would require to do lot of checks and balances after the robotic automation has been implemented. There will be SIT, there will be testing, there will be user acceptance test. So I think the areas of jobs will increase by the infusion of technology. It doesn't really go down. Now you see the infusion of technology in the last 20 years. I don't really see the job employment has really gone down. I see the voluntarily unemployment has gone up. People don't want to work. That's a different issue. But people who wants to work has got enough opportunities to work in India. I'm sorry for being candid, but that's how I believe.
No, that is a real fact, because that has been observed. The employment is being developments which is happening. That is what India is going towards, more of digital and tech savvy types. So people, why I have asked this question, because there are a lot of questions are coming from the students also. After COVID, how it is going to happen? Because this your answer actually, open up a lot of brains actually to be very peaceful. That yes, there are going to be good options. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Suresh. Thanks. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Suresh, for inviting me. Actually, it has energized.
Thank you so much for your time. I have questions
all the young people.
From our end.
Over to you, Shubhranshi.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir, for being so patient, for giving answers to all our questions. And I also thank you for giving us such a wonderful insights on future of fintech. Before we go, we have a tradition of clicking a photograph. So I request everyone to please switch on their cameras.
Let me tell you, I really thoroughly enjoyed this session, and I'll be happy sometime if I have to come again. Suresh, it was really very nice and very interactive crowd. Really, really thoroughly enjoyed.
Thank you so much for your time. Seriously, thank you so much.
And I'm sorry for if I was not able to give some response the way it was being expected. I'm sorry, but you can always write to me. I can do some research and come back.
Sure.
Just to add, pleasure is all ours, sir.
That's
like
so noble.
you to come back to us for another session for sure.
Of course. So
Yeah.
sure.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We have Sushil also
Bye.
along with
Thank
us.
you.
Thank you, Sushil.
Oh.
Thanks,
He's
Sushil.
always-
Bye, see you. Bye, Vishal.
Yeah,
sir.
bye, bye.
It's a pleasure listening and very energetic crowd you have. Awesome.
Thank you.
I think
so,
we should
Suresh,
we
would
should
you-
invite Sushil also sometime.
Suresh, would you
Yes,
would you just want to introduce Sushil? Maybe
I would love to.
I will just log out, but if
I
you
would-
just want to introduce Sushil.
No,
I'll just-
absolutely.
I'll just
I
make-
was supposed to do that. I was. I would love to introduce my friend Sushil Jadhav, and he's again, being a very great industry expert. He works for Mastercard as, acceptance head for APAC. I suppose. I'm sure he got promoted also. Congratulations, Sushil. From Mastercard, he has been working with Sir also, Vishalji also in Worldline. Then he moved to Mastercard. Great, again, fintech guy. I wish, if he finds some time, then he can come down and, some kind of time for Brads and, address our students. Thank you, Sushil, for being with us today. And he's always been being with whatever I'm doing and, Vishalji, wherever you're there.
Yeah, it's always been good to
Always.
get associated with you, man, and it's super.
Absolutely, he's always there by the side.
Absolutely. He's always been great support. Thank you so much, Sushil. And look
I
forward to
also thoroughly enjoyed it, and yeah, definitely someday I'll also like to come and tell my experiences to the kids around and see what they can benefit out of what I have learned the hard way.
Great.
Hello, thank you very much, and all the best to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Bye.
Sushil.
Yeah.
I just wrote a mail to you. You can check it.
Yeah, I'll check it.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Sure. Bye. Hi, Harsha, Priyanshi. Are you all
bye,
guys
sir.
there?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Harsha, एक मिनट hold करा.
Sure.
Abhigna. Hold on. Harsha, Jayashree, whoever there, Neha, Mahima.
Today, few people logged out already.